Chris is still in the picture. Oh, I'm still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found three. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull his off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast.
Zaiwu, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got three. And fine. And oh my God, Zaiwu! Unbelievable!
By the Numbers has returned, but it's not the return of By the Numbers, it's the revenge of By the Numbers. We are back for our third season here on the new Insight on Esports CSGO channel. Check around, there's some other shows that you might have seen in the past and some forthcoming there. And of course, this show is now sponsored by Esports Bet. The old name was DJ Esports. You might know they worked with me, they're now working with this company. And they right now are running a World's Prediction Series contest that includes the Major, includes MSI, includes basically everything going on right now for however many more days it lasts. This phase of it, it's free to enter. When you make an account, you get given some DJT, which is their token, it's a free to use thing. And basically think of it like a prediction contest. You make a bunch of bets with the DJT, and then if you can rack up enough on the leaderboard, so you get 56, when you get to like 60k, that then unlocks going into the later stage of the tournament where you can play for enormous money, like $300,000 USDT for the winner. And there's a whole bunch of people who will win. And as I say, it covers all of esports. You can cover all these different games and different areas of expertise. So if you want to go and play, sign up on Esports Bet. You get the free DJT up to a limit of 5,000 DJT every day that you log into the site. They will top you up another 1,000, which you can then use to make the bets. You'll see on some of my other shows like Competitive Edge on this channel with Monty, we actually place the bets and we show you how it works and all the odds and all that. Thanks to Esports Bet. If you like to gamble on esports or you're interested in gambling on it, consider Esports Bet.
Hello, everyone. We told you the episodes would be coming at you thick and fast. This is another episode of Revenge or By the Numbers, the third by my count. We've had the Major, we've reviewed the Major, we've talked about all the aspects of the Major, and now we're going to be talking about things in a post-Major landscape. Spoiler, it's looking pretty shit. Joining me, as always, is Duncan Thorin-Shields, the esports historian. I'm Richard Lewis. That's what the name says. It must be true. So look, I'm having a nightmare. Duncan, because probably out of all of the people that have gone to bat for ESIC, I think probably I'm the guy that's like held on to the fervent hope and prayer that they were going to be this positive force for change in the scene. Probably held on to that as long as anybody and probably promoted that as much as anybody has, when I know other people have been skeptical and stuff like that. But after this recent story that we're going to get into, namely that after having made a big song and dance about banning 3 coaches before the Major, on the premise that they encountered a bug that is so dangerous to the potential competitive integrity of a game that they had to miss out on the Major for it, that was a suitable punitive measure. They have now walked back the suspension for the Imperial coach, Peacemaker, and he was staring at between 18 months, maybe 2 years for the offence, which, as we'll get into, I communicated to them was disproportionate and too long. But that has now been reduced to time served, which is a total of 22 days and the missed Major. So I have a number of concerns about this, but I guess first I'll just get your view on the...
I want to ask you something, actually. Here's the thing. I've got an initial thought, but I think the thing you should explain initially, because this will make a lot more sense to people, is this. I actually don't put you in the same camp as Scoots with the CSPPA thing, where obviously he will just hold on to that to the bitter end. He's even said publicly, as mad as this is, like sometime late last year, he did say some comment like, the reason why he's never called out CSPPA is he doesn't think they've ever done anything wrong, which is like, when you even say something like that publicly, mate, you're just, you're making it, fair enough, you're making it clear which side your fucking bread's buttered on, but B, you're also a bit far gone, aren't you? Like, obviously they've done some things at a minimum poorly, or you might slightly disagree with the way they implement something. I don't put you in that camp, but this is why I want to ask this question, because my vibe is this, Richard. I don't think that you are just an ideologue that believes this has to work or be right. My vibe is this, because you know the people involved and knew them, by the way, before they even got sort of were known publicly. I think you actually have been able to basically ask them, like, well, why did you do these things? And I suspect, like, you notice, I don't personally think they're malicious. I think they're just essentially incompetent, or they don't understand like the scale of what they were getting into, or maybe it's not even possible for one person to do all these things. Like, by the way, one thing already I get the vibe of just from the CSGO stuff is calling it the esports integrity. Fuckers, you can't even get CSGO nailed down, mate. We've already seen if we just do the whole world of CSGO, there's too much for you. So I got that more of that vibe that you just sort of like, you thought like, right, okay, well, since it's not malicious, give them another chance. Like, let's see how it works out. But the thing is, at the end of the day, this is the vibe I get, is once, as these cases show, once you get into enough of the fucking deep water, as it were, being incompetent or malicious, like, it does matter for the intent of the person, but the outcome's the same, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, look, so let's get into right. So it was a little bit different to Scott in the sense that I think Scott actively set up the CSPPA and then moved into an advisory role. I had a few beers with ESIC and basically said, happy to help, and I'll forward all my investigations and stuff, do all the stuff I do privately behind the scene with like the discovery of game breaking bugs or ways you can cheat or match fixing. I'll collaborate because I do think we need a governing body if we're going to clean all of this stuff up. We need, wherever gambling is prevalent, people trying to beat the bookies is going to be prevalent. And the thing that worries me the most for the competitive integrity of all esports is match fixing, which is on the increase, not a decrease. So anyway, that was the premise for me getting in. What I found is, yes, all of the above, basically. They definitely bit off more than they could chew at the start. No doubt about it. They should have probably focused on one game. Like, for example, the CSPPA focused on Counter-Strike, and particular the upper echelons of Counter-Strike. I know it was a come all, all welcome kind of premise, but, talking to the members of the lesser teams and the tier 2 teams, and indeed the NA teams who had their ESL Pro League slots taken away from them, which the CSPPA didn't even fight for, a lot of people at the lower levels of the game feel underserved by that association. ESIC, on the other hand, was trying to be all things to all many. It was the global panacea to all of the problems with esports. And that's a hell of a fucking target to set yourself. Having been the watcher on the wall for 16 years myself, I'll tell you, like, you don't bag them all. There's too much.
It never ends.
It never ends. In fact, yeah, honestly, it is like that. It's like you get one person, but as I've always said, within the context, it took 6 months to do iBuyPower. So that's one meaningless game being thrown once by one group.
And that was nilled on. You had all the fucking tracked stuff, everything. You still couldn't get them in that much less of amount of time, exactly.
So imagine what it's like for people, trying to do something a bit more organized. Now, I'll add, they do have access to groups and authorities and data that I don't, as part of their partnerships with betting websites. But ultimately, the idea they were ever doing this without a staff of, you had to have at least 50 people. And as far as I can tell, they had 4. and only 2 of them with investigative powers. So that was your first problem right there. Then the next problem was they've had this, they've changed process. I think off the back of the problem they had with the Australian CSGO investigation, where there was a number of procedural errors. First and foremost, obviously, not even checking that ESEA Australia had updated the terms of service to include that you were bound by the ESIC code of conduct, thus meaning any attempt to enforce it was completely absurd. So then you had that. Also, they sent out letters to a number of people that weren't even involved due to having out-of-date roster information. So there was a number of calling them procedural errors is putting it nicely. And so that obviously speaks to incompetence. Now, the problem you've got is if you are thought of to be slow and people will tolerate one slow, but you get it nailed on right.
Yes. Fine.
We'll tolerate that. Fast and but incompetent. Well, at least you're going to correct it at the same speed. But the problem you've got is if people have a thought process about you as a body that you are slow and incompetent, it's going to be very hard to sort of maintain credibility in the space. And so I'd said to them behind the scenes, like, whatever comes next, whatever it is, because they've got a number of balls up in the air, it has to be absolutely nailed on right. And listen, I'll add, I think the first 37 coach bans they did there was maybe 1 or 2 cases that I thought were a bit of overreach or didn't make a lot of sense, maybe 3 in total. But in general, they had caught serial habitual cheats.
Oh, yes.
They had punished them. They had got Valve on board with that punishment.
By the way, some of it, a lot of
that's
fans
good
don't
work.
realise the actual major bans. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's actually Valve who determined that, right? It wasn't ESIC who determined that.
Yes, correct.
The ESIC ban is just for the total span of the circuit. They give you like a time ban. Because the problem is this: I myself sometimes get lost in that. I have to remind myself, like, Valve are the ones who determined the whole demerit system and how many majors you skip. So technically, if you dislike that, which is the main thing I dislike with like the Raging and the Roban cases, I think those are on 2 extreme levels are just too ridiculous. That's not actually ESIC who decided that. That was Valve. Correct. They're coming in with their heavy hand at the end.
And it's a partnership and a collaboration. But yeah,
sure.
Valve basically said, like, for the purposes of the majors, we'll come up with a demerit system.
Yes.
Points here. And yes, so that's fine. But the other problem then becomes, they had all of this information. And by the way, listen, I've got nothing against the admin guy that they worked with, Michal. I do think it's a little bit unprofessional to be tweeting out things when you've like essentially took money to work with them, and you're now tweeting things out like, I don't know why they didn't do anything about it, and they've had this information all the time, and it just looks a little bit like, I don't know, it would put me off working with you again because, yeah, we know things haven't been handled ideally, but this doesn't meet the threshold for whistleblowing to me.
No.
So anyway, they've had another 100+ coaches just on standby, on limbo. It was all there at that time, but because of this internal change to ensure things were done correctly, these things got like lost in the works. And there was even there's even an argument, which of course is unfair, but should they have even bothered doing this at all? Because, it's been so long. You got the main offenders. A lot of these instances, we're talking 1 round, 1 time, even in a third-person bug that can happen to anyone when they connected to the game. And so, for me, I told them, for the small offenders, of which there's like 100, just send them a letter, get them to sign the letter. This is what you would do in trade union work for anyone who hadn't been punished in an appropriate fashion. You get a warning letter on file with their signature so they don't have plausible deniability if they cheat again at a later date. That's what you would do. And that's what they should have done. And it could have been handled in a day. And then we're all just not talking about it and we can all move on to bigger and more important issues. Instead, what they did was, and under pressure from the CSPPA, it's got to be said, they were like, we've got to make a decision before the major. We believe this bug is more serious than these other 2 bugs, so we're going to punish 3 people. Now, again, I would have advised against that. I would have said you either have to stop all of the people with the bug from going, even if the bug is more serious, because you will be accused of favoritism. And lo and behold, what did they do? They banned Zach, they banned Halley, they banned Peacemaker, but they didn't ban Zonic, who by all accounts is on the list as having one of those minor single round third person infractions. And so I don't believe this to be true. I don't think ESIC has any favoritism towards any organization. But when you start getting into the weeds about how they're funded and how some of the money comes from ESL, and then some of the teams are partnered with ESL, and then they're not getting their coach, it looks really bad. It looks really bad. If people can craft a narrative that points to a conflict of interest, there's probably an inappropriate conflict of interest there. And so, unfortunately, it did look terrible. They needed to make a decision. It had to be all or none, even if it wasn't sort of fair in the way they were creating the framework for punishment, because the broader perceptions were that it was favoritism. And then, obviously, the one thing you cannot do once you deprive someone of a major is walk it back immediately at the first instance of the threat of legal action. You've just told the world we don't actually have any authority.
Yeah, we've got toothless. Yeah. Here's how you beat us. Here's the game plan. They did it. Just do what they did. Yeah, this is the part that I find silly. Basically, I have some similar thoughts that tie in there. Like, one thing I would say is this: before I get to the specific Peacemaker case, there are 2 angles here that Lopez actually looked up Tommy, because I know he has his own issues with them as a body, and what are they doing, and is there any rhyme or reason to this? Remember, he's not directly involved; he's just an outside observer. Sure. And I thought 2 points he made that were very good. One was, this is where me doing that video a few months back about Fallen having the conflict of interest, where Valve has a partnership with his company to sell peripherals and things like that, including Valve gear in Brazil. That looks terrible if then later someone's involved with a cheating case involving majors and suddenly it gets walked back when you're the guy that's where the conflict of interest isn't allowed to exist, because that makes it look like you just pulled some strings and it came through. Now, I doubt that is what happened, but that's how it looks. It's like you're saying here, if someone doesn't know behind the scenes, they're just going to assume that. The other one as well is this. He also noticed, because the main concern, as you say, from people, especially who aren't aligned with ESL, is secretly just an ESL front, or they still like have extra power, or at a minimum, they have some sort of backdoor access where they can sort of like get their way more so than others. Well, there's another thing that doesn't help. Lurper's found a tweet where something like a year ago, mate, or 2 years ago, they'd said publicly that like we're going to publish our financial reports or something, and sort of say, and apparently it looks like they haven't done it since, which by the way, no one made them fucking volunteer that information. But once you do, it looks pretty silly if you don't publish it, when then the main thing put against you is who funds you, who shows who actually funds you. So then that stuff's by the by, that's more just bad optics, basically.
Yeah.
I would say the problem with the Peacemaker case goes like this. This is an actual travesty. Essentially, this specific case, I actually think shows that ESIC are incapable of doing what they're actually pretending to do, which is be someone who essentially does arbitrate what happens within the scene, adjudicates the cases, and figures out the correct punishment. Because here's what they told us through this punishment. They told us this person is guilty, should not be allowed to play at the World Championship, and will receive a lengthy fine. Oh, wait, we're getting into legal trouble. Actually, we walk that all back. Because we can't literally go back in a time machine, we're going to say he has time served. That cannot be. There's only two options here. He either is guilty of what he did, and if he is, you said he is, he has to have the punishment you gave him. Or he is not guilty at all. This is the key understanding here, the key distinction, guys. Don't get lost on this. If he isn't guilty, why was he punished for 22 days in a major? That is a travesty. It could only be one of the two, because as you said, unfortunately, it is beyond obvious that the mechanism behind reducing the sentence has nothing to do with them revisiting what the fucking punishment would be, what the circumstance, not even something new about the bugs come out. It's not like they've discovered something, actually, the bug can trigger and untrigger it. There's none of that. It's just essentially, they've just had to like memory fucking Men in Black themselves. Actually 22 days would be appropriate. Like that's what we're all supposed to do in the scene now. Because my problem is this. It's like what you said about the match fixers. At the end of the day, this only works if we all collectively agree ASIC on some level is a good idea and we're all going to abide by what they say. Yep. If we don't, then at the end of the day, it's just a person off on the side going, I think this person should be removed for 6 months. Who the fuck are you? That's what I would say. So I have to say this as well. Bearing in mind, I can't at this point in time know what the fucking rhyme or reason is, or like now, if everyone gets a short one, or if Sonic gets off, do I have to wonder if a lawyer got involved, or if he's all pulled the strings, or if he I don't even want to have to think about that. I want them to know that, like, whatever the rule is, you're applying it in theory, in a totally objective manner. You're not trying to be at all subjective. You're trying to make it specifically, this person broke this rule in this way, this is the judgment, and that happens. Because if it doesn't, I have to go back to the old method. And I'll tell you one thing I hate about this angle, because people for a while got to pretend this was the police and all these judgments really did count. And if you get caught, you must have done it. I noticed another little trend that happened that I'm not a fan of at all. Loads of these coaches that did cheat and got banned, to this day maintain their innocence, to this day say it's corrupt, and to this day have never admitted they did it. You know what? If you're actually proven to have done it, I don't believe in lifetime bans. But I tell you what, if you refuse to acknowledge you did it when we have the evidence you did, I don't think you should be allowed to play. I think there should be a rule like once you admit it, you're allowed to play again. Listen, I don't like the sort of Riot Games thing where, when Riot like does the fucking speech block or whatever, they sort of make you like do this creepy thing where you like manually agree to like a contract, sort of saying like, yeah, I have right, I can't remember what you do, but you make you actually type like your username or something mad, as if it was like some fucking fucked up like
Faustian back.
Yeah, you just feel like you're being forced to sign something at the end of like a fucking gulag session or something. But like, here's the thing. That's because they're doing it on a fucked up angle. You almost should have to compete again. Like, I hate this thing.
ESL used to do that.
I'm innocent, man. I didn't do it. It's like, you did, and you're being punished. Like, you don't get to do that as well.
Yeah, ESL used to do that for cheating, if you remember.
Yeah, you have to write an essay or whatever saying
you were banned.
You're sorry,
you were permanently banned first time you got caught. But if you were willing to write an apology letter to them and admit you did it, and so you won't do it again, you'd get reduced to 2 years, and that's how they used to do it. But yeah, I mean, look. So
what's weird is I remember Simple sent his in as a video one. It was like, it's about see you Germans. I was like, this is a bit fucking. It's an innovative approach to an apology. Certainly, some deep law for the fans there. Whatever, fuck him. That's the other thing I don't get. Monty's point. Yeah. There's that fucking funny meme where it's the Invincible meme, where it's like, think esports. Why would you antagonize the investigator? I also don't get that angle as well. Why would you antagonize me if you don't like people being petty to you on Twitter? You just basically line yourself up for that. I don't make you do it. Just fucking. Just have to do it, don't they?
Yeah, that some people can't resist.
No, I know.
But anyway, yeah. Look, so so I was obviously when Peacemaker got the news. He obviously put out a little statement that I thought was a bit over the top, but he has had some health problems lately, and you know what it's like when you're staring into the fucking abyss of, whenever you're ill and you get reflecting. So I think he was a bit emotional, let's say, and that's fine. That's all well and good. But
why is no one that bothered, by the way, about the notion that because if I thought it would be a big deal that he did that tweet where he said about the previous bug, I didn't use this bug, but I don't get how everyone's just fine with the idea. Yeah, but it was a different bug he used though. Mate, you publicly said you didn't use the bug. Well, that's another thing I'm sick and tired of, which I know I am someone, it's going to be hard for me to relate, who has quite a good memory, but I don't feel like cheating are things that just you forget about, mate. Oh, remember that time you cheated in your job and just tried to steal? No, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. No, I think I would remember that. Do you buy these guys? Because they all say it, Richard. They all, even privately, this is how shameless they are. Privately, they'll all just say, no, I genuinely don't remember. Fuck you. Why are you tweeting that then? I don't get that angle myself as well.
I mean, so I talked to him about this because I wanted, right. So I was in this weird spot and I'm always straight with people. And especially now, I'm too old. I got no time for lies, even to people's face. And I think people think it makes me come across as tactless. In my mind, it's a sign of respect. If and so I told him straight up when we were talking, I definitely think you should receive some form of suspension for this. To me, it's not enough to say you didn't convey the information. By the way, that's always been irrelevant to how ESIC
I know exactly
with their sentences.
That's not how Robban was fucking banned, guys. Exactly. That was not how it was done. Exactly.
And my thoughts immediately go to him. A guy who, if anything, was just sort of too much of a boomer to fucking
absolutely realize
what was going on, and he's had to eat shit. And, with the added ridiculousness of he didn't even fucking win that game. He didn't even win. Not only did he not win that game that he's supposed to have cheated in, he got battered 16-1. And what? Because of that, he couldn't be behind them as they raised their major.
People forget that detail, dude. They still don't realize he was banned from winning that major. Yeah. Meanwhile, you're hearing that this is why it looks so bad, fans. Meanwhile, you're hearing Zonix conveniently left out of ban so he can attend majors. What is this shit?
Yeah.
It doesn't look good.
That's what I mean. It looks really, really bad. Yeah. And so anyway, I was talking to him about it and I said, look, brother, I've seen the video. I showed it on my stream. You're zooming around the map. And you shouldn't be zooming around the map when it happens. So if that happened to me in a competitive game of Counter-Strike, I would immediately alert an admin or alert the players on the server. Guys, I'm in a bug. I have an unfair advantage. We need to pause the game, stop the game, and replay this round as soon as possible. Anyone who doesn't do that is essentially turning a blind eye on the basis that, well, it's a bloody bug, isn't it? It's not my fault. I'm not downloading any software. And yeah, you may well have not communicated anything. You may have made a call based on it. You might not have explicitly said to have pushed apartments or whatever, but you might have said, yeah, I think we can safely take B now with that pick or something. And then there's no way you can sort of parse out the information that your brain is obtaining with the unfair advantage. You have to stop the game. You have to replay the round. So I told him and I said, I think we should get a ban. So he was originally sounding people out for character references. And I said, look, because I believe you should receive some sort of suspension, it can't be unethical for me to do that. But what I will say is I will absolutely go to ESIC and tell them that a 2-year ban is unbelievably disproportionate.
2 years is too much for that. Come on, 2 years.
Which I did. And, I don't know what the final sentencing was going to be, but for the level of offence in line with ESIC's, kind of rules.
I'm going to guess at least 3 or 4 months, if not 6, right?
Well, I mean, it was like 18 to 2 years, if memory serves me correctly. So it was a pretty long time for a use of the bug. that they deemed to be a reasonably high level offense. And so I was like telling them, like, guys, like, come on, like 2 years is too long. And I think that's why Peacemaker was like saying, you know, thanks in the thing. But, you know, his appeal had like so much to it. He sent me the appeal and said, what do you think of this? And, you know, he employed lawyers to create this appeal and craft this appeal.
By the way, am I missing something? I want to get your take on this as a sidebar, right? Even though he may well be within the bounds of the law, I mean, I'm sure you know what my position on this. The law has nothing to do with morality. I don't give a spoiler. Sure. A lot of the laws crafted in America to allow corrupt, immoral behavior just by certain people and classes. So my problem is this. By the way, there's another thing. When he brings in lawyers and pushes this down to 22 days, now I'm not on Peacemaker's side at all. Fuck Peacemaker. He now wants to cheat and get away with it because he has the legal help. I ain't a fan of that, mate.
No, so look, the way I look at it is this: I am happy to take him at his word that he did not convey any information.
Sure, if we don't have the evidence, we have to.
Yes, yeah. So I'm happy with that. In which case, he should have got a 30-day suspension like all the other people are going to get, and 30 days is nothing. It's arbitrary. It's silly to even enforce 30 days because what does it really do? It's not like the orgs are going to take a month's salary off you. It is no punishment at all. It is just paperwork for paperwork's sake. But we're also with the proviso, most of these people will just agree to it anyway, right? So I'm happy to take him at his word. And I said that too, like that he didn't, you know, there's no hard evidence to suggest he did. You can explain what happens in that round both ways, that you didn't or you did convey. You can make a case for either. And in that instance, I thought his appeal was pretty sound. Where I do have an issue is that there was like a lot of stuff to it that was, I mean, obviously it's your appeal essentially, so you are going to make a stronger case for yourself as possible. But you know that Mahone POV review he released. What
even is that? Should we just talk about that for a second?
Oh, please do.
I'll give you an example. Here's who the Mahone guy is. He's one of those people. Elmer Putty was the first one who makes those videos on YouTube where they do a good job, like educationally explaining things that pro players and teams are doing. Like here's a fucking Molly execute on Inferno from Astralis 2019 or whatever. You do that, right? And obviously people might know for Katowice, he was even hired by ESL to do like explain around to this, right? Why that would then mean he now somehow determines if you cheated or not. Like I don't even see the connection. It's a complete non sequitur to me. And he's not part of ASIC and he's not some sort of famous, but I don't even get what we're doing here. Isn't that essentially just like when Reginald just had other people who knew him go, actually Reginald's a cool guy. It's like, what are we doing here? Like,
it's not far off. I mean, so first of all, like if I was ESIC, I would discount anything Mahone says because they're employed by the same entity as Peacemaker. So they work with Imperial, right?
Not a good look. Right. Also, by the way, he just recently, after doing this thing for Peacemaker, made a video why was Imperial so good at the major, which already is a massive fucking exaggeration of that storyline. So I'm already feeling not so great about maybe his neutrality on the topic of Imperial.
Yeah, so I think
no offense to him as a person, but he's doing that, not me, mate.
But I think he's done content with Imperial, so that's an issue.
Okay.
But then also in the appeal, he was presented as an independent expert by Peacemaker's law firm, which is
how could he be an independent expert?
Yeah, I mean, listen.
As soon as you're paid, if fans don't get it, as soon as you're paid by them, you're not independent by definition.
And I'll just read to you because obviously I've got it with me. I'll just read to you how Mahone was set up as in the appeal essentially. Okay. He said. Danny Mahone is a professional analyst of CSGO, one of the most respected authorities of the game today.
That's exaggeration. Come on, man. Yeah. Come on.
And so, you know, listen, there's a thing. I know this has got nothing to do with law. In fact, you know, what ESIC have done is to avoid it getting legal because then everyone gets jammed up with lawsuits. You bleed out money and probably it just gets tossed in the end anyway because it's a jurisdictional nightmare, right? But, you know, spoiler, when you assert a witness's credibility, right, and when you bring in an expert witness, you can't just make up details about that, which I'm sure them as lawyers are aware of. Because it's not in a court and it is just a letter of appeal, obviously you can gas someone up as much as you want, but there is absolutely no way you could have him say if it was like a courtroom, fucking, he's one of the foremost authorities on CSGO. Why exactly? Like, on what basis? What experience? So, that I thought was all just a bit silly, but it was clear they were scrambling. And they had players from the game say that if they recall, if Peacemaker giving them any information, they say no. That, to me, by the way, might sound silly on its face, but actually, given that he now has no relationship to them, they would be under no inclination to lie.
Okay.
He sort of works against them right now, if you think about it. So maybe someone like Snappy might want to say, well, fuck him, actually. Yeah, if I can take him down a peg or two. But, Snappy and I think Esperanto and Esatag all said in that game he did not communicate anything to us. So that, to me, is fair enough as well. And that's a check in the W column, like, well done, fair enough. So on the face of it, I think Isak looked at all of it. But here's the key part. So first of all, at the end of the appeal, they did two things. And once again, we get back to talking about Isak and competence. And they did a comparison to other arbitration bodies in the world of sports, including things like USADA and stuff like this, and how they're structured, and pointed out some inconsistency between the two. They also pointed to the Isak Code of Conduct and said that there wasn't really a suitable wording under which to take action against someone for a bug, which is astounding.
What? Why would they say that?
Right. So listen, here, I'll tell you. It says under Article 2.82 of the Isak Code of Conduct. Hang on, where is it? Shit, I can't find the exact wording. But yeah, basically, it doesn't mention anything specifically about bugs. It only says things about using something to cheat or engaging in cheating, using something that alters the game. It was not very specific to bug use, using a bug to obtain an advantage. There's no such language around that. The other thing they did is they compared it, and this is another problem, isn't it, with Isak, the inconsistency. They also said, you're talking about banning our client for 2 years, when someone who admitted to knowing that a coach was cheating in their games, this is obviously law, and they don't name him, but they say that individual got a public reprimand, a warning to future conduct, mandatory attendance at 2 one-on-one education sessions with the Isak commissioner, and a 15-minute check-in with the commissioner every month for a minimum of 6 months. So they've got a point. How can you warrant a 2-year suspension for this on the face of the evidence when someone who was confessed gets that? And what I'm starting to realize is, and I don't know if it's just Ian Smith who doesn't want to get litigious, because he is a lawyer, he's from that background, so it seems to me odd he's so conflict averse in the courts. Or if it's something else, like the money just isn't there to fight these things.
Sure.
But what it looks like to me is, if you lawyer up, you can get the case tossed. And I think that's a terrible fucking look, because what's going to happen now when you try and, like, Sonic's not even going to take a 30-day suspension.
Why would you waste your time?
Why would you get Vitality? You're just going to say, we got the money, talk to our lawyer. And they're going to say, well, on the reflection, and we're going to be here again. So essentially what they have done after some initial good work is they have now essentially given the game away that, no, we are not going to fight you legally. And do you know what that means? It now opens it up to everything they've already done, the original 37. Yep. This is the problem. It's like in real life, we're fucking...
Oh, if I'm raging, I'm calling my lawyer the second I hear this episode, mate. Oh, let them go. They banned me for majors. There was nothing in the TOS of Valve. You just say it all. Of course, I think it'd all fly at this point.
Yeah. And so, and I can't imagine, on the subject of Valve, I can't imagine Valve are going to be happy about this at all.
How could
you?
I know.
Because Valve essentially give them credibility by agreeing to mirror their bans with these demerit system that they've got. They're in open communication all the time. But the problem now is, you've got players, coaches rather, feeling aggrieved, missing a major. You've got organizations saying, who are the Isak? In the CIS region, Isak's name is Mud. You've got the Brazilian region, which believe Isak are involved in some conspiracy against Brazilians. You've got the Argentinian...
Because they all cheated, by by the way, fans, because they all cheated.
Right. You've got the...
I love that as well. It's like they think we're all bloody cheaters. Did any of you not cheat? Well, no, that's beside the point, isn't it?
Right. You've got the 9Z guys.
I love them.
The 9Z org, the Argentinians come out and they said that, publicly, their CEO said Luis Mira was a snitch and was back channeling to E6. Spoiler, he's not. And so ultimately, you just end up with like, if you've got regions now that are going to point blank refuse to respect their authority. And then we got a big problem, because one of the big problems in esports in general is it is impossible to treat all regions equally when they all hold disproportionate amounts of financial power. In particular, I'm talking about you, China, yes. Good luck ever penalizing the Chinese team for any of this shit. And good luck Valve agreeing to it either. So unfortunately, this was like the school bully who's actually a pussy, and he's been hit publicly, and his nose is bleeding, and now everyone's laughing at him. Good luck next time you try and pull someone's fucking underpants up. So I don't know. It's sad for me because it didn't have to be like this. They could have just done what I originally recommended. They didn't. They elected not to. Spoiler, low-key, that will always piss me off if we're in consultation and we're talking about this. Not an official consultation.
No.
We have an open channel and I proffer some advice and completely disregard it, and then you make a mess of things.
Same thing with the PGL shit. That's one of the things that triggers us both. We both told them all the things to avoid.
Yeah, I know.
All the data falls, exactly.
I know, yeah. And it's just like, listen, like, if you can't do it properly, you shouldn't be doing it at all. And like I said, there's people at ESIC that I really like, but right now I think there is a solid argument to say that I don't know if Ian Smith can even continue. Like, I don't know if he can continue as commissioner at this point. He's got too many L's under his belt, and unfortunately, they were only going to get away with one, and they've got about three. And so now the thing that worries me is when the North American match fixing report eventually drops in 2026. No one's going to care. No one's going to follow it up. They're just going to go, it's ESIC, they're incompetent. I didn't fix their matches, even though we've literally got them bank rights on video doing it. So, fuck it. I mean, at the end of the day, unfortunately, the problem is, and I've said this before, everyone turning on ESIC the way they did over relatively minor things, I was definitely against that. I was definitely against the reaction when people just believed what Spirit had said and all that. I was still fighting for them right up until this point. But at this point, it's just, you had to be willing to fight. You had to go out on your shield.
It's like the CSPPA. Even if you weren't going to win the fights, you had to say it was wrong, and you had to sometimes try and do the boycott, even if it, again, didn't hold. I agree with you, just for the precedent and the statement you make in doing so. Because that's the angle I agree with you on the Ian Smith one. It's like, mate, if you yourself as a lawyer and you've essentially just low-key admitted we'll never pursue this legally, then what's this built on? It's just a house of sand, isn't it? It's nothing we can do with this. Like, it's just all going to fall away. And the worst part now is this. Like, the real problem I have goes like this. ESIC wouldn't be a big deal if esports was what people thought it was before this coaching bug, which is, I'm sure only a couple of people cheating. Why would they cheat? They'd get caught and then it'd all be really bad, blah, blah, blah. If that's what esports had been and it was like 10 people at any one time cheating in different ways, then you could do this because most of them wouldn't figure this out. You'd give them small bans, you'd get them all done publicly with the optics, and you'd be able to serve some function. The problem I've found is this. The more you tug on the fucking string of different forms of cheating and exploits, the whole fucking jumper's unraveled. It turns out every cunt was fucking cheating, unless they now know that there's someone's breathing down their neck. And unfortunately, it turns out the people who are breathing down their neck to stop you doing it can't even do that. They can't actually enforce it. So essentially, we're in a scenario where it's almost like we need martial law. We can't have any police. So I think I don't know what the option is, because here's the problem. Yeah, it'll, in some ways, it stops me having to worry about ESIC if I think, well, ESIC's irrelevant. Who gives a fuck? They're idiots. But I'm still back at square one where every cunt's cheating and now there's nothing we can do about it. That fucking sucks. And by the way, I hope people understand this. The saddest part about this equation isn't that ESIC is toothless and a paper tiger and they can't do anything. The saddest thing is that the pro scene is full of people who will cheat and take every disingenuous, fucked up, immoral advantage they can. Just because, sometimes just because even, dude. Like, the one I can't handle is when they're just doing it in like meaningless matches and stuff. It's like, you're just a cunt, aren't you? You are just a fucking shower of shit, mate. Especially because, I know this is a side tangent, Me and you were 24/7. It's all like the joke is we're constantly being scrutinized. It's all like they were they were like the person judging our soul itself and our life journey. And the people doing it were absolute twats just cheating. Fuck off. Fuck right off with that shit, mate. Fuck
Well,
right off.
And now, obviously, we are going to get this fucked up issue now where ESIC, let's say they released, they've got the Akuma investigation ongoing. Community, they've made up their mind now. Community have made up their mind that they are not coming back on board with what ESIC have got to sell. No. And so let's say their next report is impeccable. Let's say it's absolutely impeccable and nailed on. And finally, those bullshit artists that we all knew were dirty finally get got. No one's going to care now, mate. And that's what makes me sad. It's like, we need a body like ESIC, but I'm not going to excuse incompetency. I'm not going to excuse getting it wrong. You're playing with people's reputations. You're playing with people's lives. You're playing with the fabric of the scene. And you have got to be unimpeachable. You have got to be. That is the standard. That is the bare minimum standard you have to set yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
They've made too many mistakes now. And so for me, there has to be meaningful change at the highest level for me to have any confidence again. They're going to have to announce it. And, you know, if they don't, I'm going to be highly skeptical of anything they do moving forward. There's also, spoiler, a genuine risk that ESL uncouple from them, you know, other members uncouple from them, Valve probably on the phone, why did you want about the Peacemaker thing, what's going on, right? Well, we're no longer going to honor that. You know, there was talks that they had where Riot were like, listen, if you actually get that North American match fixing report done, we'll ban them over in Valorant as well. That's all going to fall.
Oh, that's even worse, now. Yeah.
You know, it's all over. It's all over. You cannot keep stacking these fucking L's, man. It's like, it's just the basics of what an authority needs to be. And as I said, I know there's good people over there and they're going to be sick as fuck over how this is playing out. But, you know, at the end of the day, you got to be part of the solution.
Mate, that Valorant one actually tilts me even more because here's the other thing. You know this, because you can't, especially as a journalist, actually police everyone and you can't even get some of the people who are guilty. The one good thing is that you occasionally get someone, at least someone pays for doing something. So I was even hoping that would at least be one of the few positive outcomes of the match fixing shit, was at least some wanker who thinks he's already got away and he's on the tropical island with the pina colada. All of a sudden, it's like the phone call comes in. What do you mean? What's happening? Like, I want that to happen because if you don't know, by the way, some of these motherfuckers have won like massive tournaments and stuff and are like the top players now. I want that motherfucker to actually pay for what he did, not just sail off into some other game and parlay his fucking cheating into some other bullshit. And then, yeah, as you say, this is the problem when you do this, is everything's called into question now. Everything.
Yeah, everything. So let's move on to the next topic. I think we can wrap that up in a bow. We'll see what ESIC do next. And whether or not they sort of do make any statement or any changes. But let's instead talk about Na'Vi, one of the hot button topics right now in Counter-Strike. Obviously, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine has created a unique set of challenges for a Kiev-based organization. The CEO is someone who naturally, like a lot of Ukrainians, is very aggrieved about everything that's happening, even to the point of he himself has deployed himself with part of the militia defending the city. And he's made a number of decisions at his business where he has explicitly stated in a Washington Post interview, we are not going to have anyone play and represent our organization if they continue to pay Russian taxes and therefore fund Putin's war machine. This obviously means that the 3 Russian players on the roster of what was the greatest team in the world, and of course the Stockholm Major winners, they are now being expected to relocate. But just before the major, Boomich's wife said some pro-Putin, pro-Russian military things on social media, prompting Boomich, their IGL, to have to come out and essentially denounce what she was saying that Russian people are brainwashed. The media here is very propaganda heavy. And so I hope everybody knows I have always loved Na'Vi. It's been an honor to represent this fantastic organization. And we will see what happens with me after the major. Spoiler, he was out on his arse. Na'Vi said they didn't want to have the reputational risk anymore of having Boomich on the roster. And so he is out and being replaced. There was obviously other news. Electronic and Perfecto have both agreed to relocate, with Electronic earmarked to take over the IGL role. So Buster strongly linked, but let's do it one stage at a time.
By the way, on the one detail I want to point out, because I notice people always get this actually wrong. It's one of those things where, you know, as a journalist, you have to look at the actual facts. People always say that Electronic's wife said something in support of the war. False. If you ever look up the actual fact, I believe what she did was there's some like old boomer musician who said something along the lines of like, Russia doesn't start wars, they end them, or some sort of like fucking stupid, like random, almost sounded like some sort of idiom or something. When he said that, she liked his post, which, by the way, look, in intent, it obviously shares the sentiment, but it is not the same as her herself doing it on. So I'll just put that one out, because I think people conflated the two cases and they often get that one wrong, because that's why it's going to seem very bizarre that Electronic could stay. If she'd really herself said that statement, obviously that would be a fucking game changer. But the implication for me on that one is, as long as she shuts the fuck up, doesn't say anything, potentially he can still stay in the team, is sort of the vibe I got.
Yeah.
Whereas I got the vibe, the Boomich wife example, like it seems like she's not under his control in any capacity and is going to do whatever the fuck she wants.
Well, I mean,
it's implied she might not even be his wife anymore. No one even bloody knows that. It sounds like it's on and off every week. Yeah, it's been a turbulent relationship.
Yes. I think it's a nice way of framing it. Well, look, let's just start with this. Is this because you're the esports historian? Is this the first instance of someone in esports being removed from a position because of something their spouse did?
I feel like almost certainly. Like the craziest thing is, I was even trying to think, like, it's so rare. I was trying to think the only actual comparison analog I could come up with, not even from esports, because you'll know this actual case. And again, a lot of people don't know this details. Actually, fucking Colin Kaepernick. If people don't remember, one of the details, the problem is it's such a long saga. You have to basically know the NFL like we do. You can't be someone who's coming in late on this one. But if you remember the order that it all went in, right? There was a period of time where he'd been out for a while and he really was actually going to have a chance to get tryouts. And one of the people in his corner was Ray Lewis, the legendary fucking middle linebacker, right? And what Colin Kaepernick unfortunately did that fucked his whole situation is right when Ray Lewis was trying to convince the Ravens to take him as, I think, like the backup quarterback or whatever, you know, behind Joe Flacco, I think, at the time. Right when he was trying to do this, the wife or girlfriend of Colin Kaepernick, I forget which she was at the time, made a tweet where it was just fucking like the Ravens owner, Andre Lewis, like, you know, giving him a back rub. And then he just took like that picture and just put it next to like the fucking Samuel L. Jackson character from Django Unchained and the Leonardo DiCaprio character. And just that tweet alone, I'm not joking, it was implied that that just killed that deal dead instantly. Because unsurprisingly, that owner just woke up like, maybe I won't give this fucking guy a chance, actually, even though it wasn't technically Kaepernick who said it himself. So that's the only analog I can think of, mate. Because as he said, this particular scenario, like the weirdest part about the sort of anger against this, I get the sentiment that you don't like it, but the problem I have with this is you're almost implying that like men control women in that scenario. Like at the end of the day, like how can he stop her from tweeting it, if you know what I mean? Like I don't read it. I find it I think it's a very complicated scenario because it's almost treated again as if he said it. It's like they keep conflating the stories together, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really tough because it's like, yes, this idea that, you know, you're married. So like obviously, I think a spouse should have kind of enough respect for you to, you know, maybe understand that you're in a difficult position.
For sure. I think there's a lot of naivety involved in that regard, yes.
You know, we've seen it in politics where people's partners tweet or say inappropriate things and, you know, I want to, the Conways, that's a whole fucking mess, isn't it? Right there, you know? And so obviously there are these issues where you want your partner to kind of be on side, but equally it's like you say, it's a marriage. It's not like some fucking weird relationship where Boomich has like complete dominion over what she can and can't say or can and can't think. And at the end of the day, it does make me a little bit squeamish if we're going to start
I agree.
expanding the ring of punishment now reaches out to.
Dude, it gives me sort of
people
Chinese
married.
vibes of the sort of like fucking the Society of Fear, where it's like, oh, it's not just enough that like you said it. Oh my god, a family member of yours said it, so now you must be punished collectively. Like, what are we doing? Like the fuck? Again, look, I totally get the optics are terrible if you are Navi, of course, if you keep the guy, because there's the other thing to say. If you're a Western fan, you're not going to know this because you're not reading all the Russian tweets and you're not on VK. There's the other thing. Forget Reddit and Twitter. You have to be on sites like VK, their Facebook. The problem a lot of people don't know is this, and you might have seen a little bit of it bleed out with Simple's changing feelings on this matter, is there is also constant pressure from people who I would imagine would describe themselves as Ukrainian nationalists, of all the esports people from Ukraine. If they themselves aren't already overtly taking that tack, there is constant pressure of like, why aren't you decrying this? Why aren't you speaking out against this? Why? I thought there's some of the people, if people don't know, were even talent, who were sort of like, you haven't said enough yet, though. All you've said, one of them even tried to imply like, all the Gambit guys should just say they're against war. What about this war? It's like, I don't think people know the like bubbling pressure under the surface out of our view on all these people. Like, they're essentially not people who are just in a situation just to give their own thoughts, like totally apropos of nothing. There's pressure constantly on them of what they say and scrutiny of how far did you go. Oh, it sounds maddening.
Yeah, it's really fucked up because it's like you say, there is this expectation that you have to come out and say these things. And I get, again, another thing that makes me really squeamish is like this idea of compelled speech. And I think it's very easy for us, in our society, in Britain, in America, in Europe, where, I mean, listen, it's not ideal. We all have heard the joke. I've got a license for that Facebook post. Yeah, we all know about that. But in general, if I want to criticize the government, if I want to go online today and say Boris Johnson's a cunt, or Joe Biden is senile, whatever it is, I'm totally fine to do that.
Yes.
In Russia, they've expanded these laws recently to include specifically talking about the Ukraine conflict, but they've always had very strong, if you're anti the state in any way, shape, or form, they can imprison you for it.
They essentially treat you as a traitor, like it's treasonous.
Yes. Yeah. And so right now, all those people you saw who were doing the peaceful protests, holding up signs saying that just simply said peace. A lot of those people who were arrested have done 2 weeks in prison. And obviously, I have no doubt are on a list of some sort now and are going to be monitored. So listen, I understand. Yes, it's incredibly moving and brave, and definitely a good and ethical thing to do, to call out tyranny. But if you live under said tyranny, it is also dangerous, and it is not your place as someone who enjoys freedoms to make demands of people that don't enjoy those freedoms. I see it a lot. And so, first of all, Boomich apologized and made a statement, by the way, explaining why he hadn't said something sooner.
He did everything you could do, as far as I can tell.
So he clearly paid lip service to how great Navi is. And what really upsets me is that in the Washington Post interview the CEO did, he himself said, in Russia, people are brainwashed and they believe bullshit, but our players never would do that. Our players know the truth. And so he was initially saying, these guys here, like, we're going to help them relocate. They know it's bullshit. They don't support Putin. And that obviously at that time included Boomich. And now, because of something his wife's done, it's like he's lost the good graces because she's not even associated with Navi. She doesn't.
I know, she's not in esports.
Yes. So, listen. I can't even tell where the line is with this anymore, mate. So I feel sorry for Boomich.
Here's why I don't get it, because there's almost an implication there of like, just divorce her and it's fine. Like, isn't that what you are inferring he should do? Like, what's left for him to do at this point?
I mean, real talk. He's still got the divorce to look forward to.
I know.
Like, and he's lost his job over it. And not only has he lost his job, he's lost his job at the worst possible time to lose his job. I'm not just talking about global inflation. I'm talking about Russia being the fucking international pariahs that they are. He's never going to play for a top-tier org ever again. He's going to go to some Russian team now, and that's his career. You know, he's going to be...
I'll tell you something. I'm just going to throw this out there. This is pure speculation. If you know the way orgs work and TOs work, you don't get paid your prize money instantly. There's a world where he might be owed hundreds of thousands of dollars between the two majors. They won one, made second to the other one. They won that Intel Grand Slam last year. I doubt they pay you that million fucking the next week. Like, between all that, there's a world where he could very well be owed a massive amount of money. And if you know the current climate of what people, not only the Western people, when the banks stole money from the Russians, obviously the famously loads of yachts were taken from the oligarchs. There are these stories where companies, they just basically take all the shit and they're like, get the fuck out. Like, there's some mad stories about them. So there's a world in which I've just seen too much, and let's be real, from the CIS fucking esports scene too, where I have concerns that like this might be a moment where someone could figure out opportunistically, this would be a way not to have to pay someone hundreds of thousands of dollars, because you know what? He is with the enemy side. We've kicked him out. And also, you know what? Back to Russia you go. You have no jurisdiction. We're in Ukraine now. Like, I hope there is none of that at play. Because another thing I think is gross about this is, at a minimum, in my opinion, you owe Boomich every dollar he ever earned in Na'Vi. I actually personally think, even if you fired him behind the scenes, you owe him in a video where you're like, thank you, Boomich. This guy actually gave you a fucking major. This guy gave you a Grand Slam. We can all have discussions all day long. Easy to realize. It doesn't matter. He sat in the chair and they won. And at the end of the day, I've always said this, you cannot win the biggest tournaments in the world and be the best team in the world with shit players. Like, even if the worst IGL is doing something, he's doing his job on some level. So like, I actually think no matter what the circumstances are, you almost should like go out of your way to make it like as positive a departure as possible. Not least also, by the way, just because how do you think history will look back on this? Like, I actually think some of the things being done now are going to age so incredibly poorly in a few months. I even think when we get to this discussion later, if you look at the fucking players being associated with Na'Vi, already the shit they've said in the last few months is looking really hollow when you consider some of the people they're thinking of getting. So that this whole thing does bleed into another thing, which I'm sure we'll get into if we get to those players, which is I hate this whole vibe of like, right, well, because they're Russian and we're not, we can just break all our contracts and steal their money and steal their players. And like, no, that ain't morally right. That's fucked up. It doesn't matter, by the way, that someone else Russian is killing someone else in your country. Why would that allow you to steal? Well, by the way, if you do that, what's to stop everyone doing that at that point in time? What's to stop, by the way, here's a great one for you fans. You haven't thought about this one. Bear in mind, you could almost never get to the Chinese and actually go into their jurisdiction and go to court. What's to stop the Chinese just realizing, hey, we never needed to honor our contracts. We'll just, anytime we want, we'll just nick a few things. There's 100K for me. You're not going to honor this contract, not going to pay you out for this event. They could start doing that tomorrow if we allow this just madness where we're just pretending contracts and don't exist if someone's a bad guy or something. Like, that's how it works.
Yeah. And so, look, you know, overall, I like I said, my gut reaction is I do feel a bit sorry for Boomich.
Oh, it's terrible.
I've never seen him say anything like pro-nationalist. I mean, he's never talked about politics at all, really, has he? I mean, he's just a kid who's just playing his games and, you know, made the mistake of, you know, I mean, based on what people have told me about that relationship there, and, you know, I'm not getting into it. The kid's had a hard enough time. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, people were trying to warn him away and be like, oh, come on. It happened at the major, as you said, so it is fair game to discuss within the history of our game now because you did it at the biggest event on the biggest stage publicly. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I don't think it's a relationship that's going to last. And so the
idea it's fucked his whole career also. Yeah. It's just like, come on, guys, have some fucking compassion.
Yeah, I know. But it's really interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, we've seen... I think very, very different reactions, you know, for like from people. You know, obviously Device had his issues, you know, when he moved to NIP, and there's some parallels here.
Sure.
And, you know, you really find out where people's kind of like, you know, consistency, you know, like part of their brain is based on the reactions. I saw some very unsavory fucking comments about this, you know, which is just fucked up. What I will say is, on the face of it, I guess the good news is they are not losing electronic and
that's big time news. That was my main fear, was essentially just the electronic move. I think the Perfecto one would suck also, but like the real problem is this: like we all know you can't tell the story of Simple getting from one man carry to win the major without the electronic story. I mean, the joke is he even straight up carried the last map of the major they won, didn't he? Like, so like he is essentially like that. He is the fucking, like, it's not a great analogy directly, but he is the Scottie Pippen to the Michael Jordan of Simple. So the other thing I think would have sucked also if he had to leave is those are the guys where, like, it's like I would say this in my reflections to him. When Twists first got with Liege, I just told him, like, behind the scenes one time, I just told him, look, mate, unless he's an absolute dickhead to you, you have to figure out some way the two of you play together your whole careers. Because if you do that, you're not going to find better players than this. You got to, when you find another genius play, you got to stick with that guy. That's how you win the championship. So I've no doubt Simple and Electronic had that vibe. So that's the one good thing, as you say, that comes out of this. Is like, look, of all the people, it'll sound fucked up, but if I had to pick of the three to lose, I would have picked Boomich. Yeah. So look, it's still good. Like, this means Navi can still be an amazing team. Like I said on Twitter, mate, just that the 4-man lineup minus an IGL, mate, that's first of all, it's an IGL's dream if you're going to join a team. It's fucking amazing, that lineup of players. And already those four, you look at that and you like, put anyone in there, surely they're going to be a contender still. It's mega, that lineup. eSportsBet is the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. They exclusively work off crypto. You deposit crypto, you can bet with it, you withdraw crypto. By the way, when you deposit crypto to the site, they actually give you 10% per year back. Obviously, based on a year, it'll scale based on how long you have it in there. They'll just give you that for having it in the account, basically. You can bet on all esports games, CSGO, all levels of CSGO, League of Legends, Valorant, Rainbow Six, FIFA, Dota 2, whatever game, Rocket League, whatever game you can imagine, they have it. So it's not just for your CSGO needs. Thanks to them, obviously, for sponsoring this particular podcast. And if you're watching something like the Major or the big tournaments like MSI, it's on the site right now. You can go there, you can play for free with the DJT, or you can deposit your crypto. There'll be a link in the bottom down below if you want to deposit your own crypto, and you can get a discount on that. I think it should be up to 50% deposit bonus, up to $200. So you can get a cheeky little amount there to play with extra, so you can have some fun with it. Thanks to eSportsBet. Let's get on with the rest of the show.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there was a lot of speculation. I almost feel this might have been a move that came about very recently, like an agreement, because, you know, all the rumblings behind the scenes were that Electronic wasn't going to relocate. Yep. And now they are publicly saying he has. I think after the Boomich thing, I think it's like, well, first of all, you know, the org is serious. They are going to cut you. You're not going to be given any grace there. And the other point is as well, I think the entire team capitulates if you lose one other part of it, because listen, I'm gonna just say this. I am incredibly nervous about Simple saying things that he's saying when he uses terms like the end, when he starts talking about, I'm still going to be making my decision to be confirmed. And he apparently on stream is saying, I'm thinking about taking an extended break from the game. You've got that. I think you had Perfecto today, just tweeted out summertime sadness. You know, these guys at the start of the conflict were saying to each other, we're an unbreakable force. Like, we're not going to let, you know, geopolitics affect our individual relationships. We represent Navi, we represent Ukraine, and yes, you know, Electronic does do that. He's as much Navi as I am. It's simple, you know, that was the point at the start of the conflict. That was the big point. You know, Carmack brought him out on stage to say these things to the world. And you fast forward to where we're at now, and I think the reality's probably wore down on Simple. Not to mention, by the way, again, you're right, there was already an iron curtain in place in a way, because people don't know what's being said on VK and people don't know what's being said on Telegram. In the West, we don't use those things for content. And by the way, spoiler, the reason why Telegram is so popular is it's peer-to-peer encrypted. And even then, people are afraid that the state is spying on them right now, because Russia do that. But anyway, you know, like, people were calling Simple a traitor. People literally were calling him a traitor and saying
even like some of the CIS talent I saw were making implications publicly, like, along those lines. Yeah.
And it's fucking heartbreaking to see, because it's like, I'm sure Simple's conflicted enough with you know, like you say, he's the Michael Jordan of this sport. He's an icon to like so many people around the world. His fucking country is being invaded. He's probably got people in his life that have either been displaced or killed as a result of this conflict, you know. And people are saying, "Oh, you need to go back and go get your gun, son."
I saw there's a decent sentiment of people who also say that repeatedly to Na'vi players, like, "Why haven't you joined the army then? Why haven't you enlisted?" It's like that is outrageous as a thing to say. That is fucking mental, isn't it?
No, but I mean, I've seen people accuse him of like cowardice. By the way, on Reddit, like mods not cleaning up that shit, just comments of people saying like, "I lost all respect for Simple when he didn't." Why would you want Michael Jordan to go and get shot?
I know it's mental.
Like, why would you want that? Like, it's just like, guys, like you're probably some teenager. You probably have this like idea of like, you know, if someone invaded my country, like, I'd be there. Mate, fucking, I'll tell you, I lost a friend to fucking friendly fire. I've talked to veterans that are ravaged with PTSD and all. It's no fucking joke, kids. I'm telling you.
They think it's a movie. I know.
No, trust me, it's fucking horrible. And I would not be telling people unless they want to do that. In which case, have at it. Like, I think you're incredibly brave. But if you don't want to do that, you're in no way less of a man or a fucking traitor or something like that. And to say it is absolutely outrageous, especially given, you know, there's an argument that maybe Simple can do more in a way.
Can do way more.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You know, but man, the vitriol and the pressure and the hate that has been slung the way at the Na'vi players, and not just the Russian players, actually Simple himself, you know, it's fucking wild. It's like, guys, we gotta take a breath. Like, we really have to. And, you know, look, Electronic relocating, Perfecto relocating, you know, thank God they're sort of able to keep, you know, to make that decision and to keep this team together. But I mean, even so, as we'll get to now, depending on the replacement,
it opens all kind of worms, doesn't it? I know.
So let's go there. So first of all, the COO, I believe, not the CEO, came out and said, Buster, first of all, Yakindar's not joining because we wouldn't pay money to Virtus Pro.
See if you can keep track of this, guys. It's going to be hard. Go on.
Right. Well, Yakindar wouldn't be joining because he's under contract to Virtus Pro. We won't sign someone from Virtus Pro because they're a Russian-owned organization and owned by an oligarch. However, Buster from Virtus Pro might be joining because Buster, we can get out of his contract, and therefore we wouldn't have to pay Virtus Pro anything, we think, probably. So the Yakindar story, they came out and specifically denied, but the fact that they've been in talks with a Virtus Pro player, they haven't denied. And so it gets like really weird. And also, I don't know which way this goes. Like, there seems to be a lot of people kind of like saying, well, listen, yeah, because of what's going on with the sanctions, the contracts don't hold up. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen people try and make this argument in the world of sports, but it's a fucking murky mess. I mean, it's not cut and dry. So I don't know. It seems to me as well, why would you want to aggrandize players from that org if you've got an issue with, it's just crazy. So I don't even know who they're going to get as a replacement now if they're ruling out Yakindar, who, spoiler, by the way, would have been absolutely...
It's amazing.
Yeah, would have been an amazing pickup. Would have been a way in which they could have even upgraded through all of the problems, probably. Because Electronic's done IGL before. It wasn't great, and his individual performance took a hit, but it wasn't a particularly big sample size. So I don't know, but I mean, do you have a preference? I mean, and do you think they should be taking anyone from Virtus Pro at all? I mean, assuming they don't pay any money to the org, is it okay?
Right, the main problem I have goes like this. If you just didn't make that statement in the first place about the fact that you won't pay money into Russian bank accounts for your employees, then none of this was even an issue. Like, by the way, just like Cloud9, although they technically didn't directly buy them from Gambit, they bought them from a Norwegian agency who conveniently had just bought them from Gambit, which I don't think would happen if they didn't have a buyer to it. See, anyway, we get what they did on the abstraction there. Well done. You did a fucking decent job on one hoop to jump through. If they'd done it that way, right? Whatever. That's, again, you try and upgrade your lineup. I mean, as you say about the Kindar one, by the way, that's even an optics win because most people wouldn't give a fuck about the ethical thing of what you said. They'd just go, wow, maybe it's going to be an even better team than with Boomic, which I wouldn't even have initially thought that was possible to come out in this scenario with a better lineup and keep the right Russian players. Like, that's actually essentially that's the jackpot. You should rip the guy's arm off if he offers you that, if you're Na'Vi. The problem is that you have made it about this, like, almost like a moral principle, like, I will not fund Russia in any way. And so, yeah, I have an issue with the idea that, like, now essentially you are going to cut off your nose to spite your face, though, because you're going to take the not as good player from Virtus Pro. Neither player is Russian, by the way. People don't know. It's just about the org, like Richard says. You're going to not take him on the basis that he's not still under contract, though. Like, in that scenario, like, as you say, you're still taking a Virtus Pro player. You just don't pay them the money. Like, what are we really doing at this point in time? Like, again, aren't we just fucking, it's a shell game, right? Just moving pieces around going, oh, I did something. It's like, did you? What did you really do? So I've obviously, of the two, I would take Kindar. And by the way, I'm generally just sick of this because it's mainly G2 that do this. You know, G2 are the ones who go out of their way to actually publicly say that roles wouldn't work. So they go like, well, we can't have Robs. Roles wouldn't work, would they? Oh, can't have your Kindar. The roles wouldn't work. You know what, mate? Your team's shit. Like, I wouldn't worry about roles, mate. Like, these are world-class players. Spoiler, if they play a role, give them that role. And whoever doesn't, he's the one out on his ass. Yeah. Even if he's Bosnian, mate. Like, I don't get, this is a silly game we're playing. So the same thing with the angle here. Being as we're going to have to make someone an IGL anyway. So I mean, imagine he's shifting from some of his roles. Like, I doubt you can play like Electronic can and be the full-time IGL. I think at that point, you just get in as good players as you can, and then you figure out your squad. You know, you do like a fucking Pep Guardiola. You don't do like his classic team. I've built it. You figure it out after the fact if you've got a good, like, Blade's a genius, man. I bet you can figure out how to use these players. I even think of all the people, it sounds like, as everyone's often mentioned, it sounds like Electronic was the player who was grooming for this role anyway, and that you had in mind for it. And even seems, I've always said this, one of the knocks I had against Boomic was, anytime I looked, it looked to me as though, like, Simple Electronic just ran that team anyway at the best of Blade. Yeah. And he Boomic just played a role and fit in where he could. So the sad thing is, I do think either way, even the Buster edition would be interesting. I've always thought he was a very solid player. Yeah. I just find it to be complete fuckery, as we're saying on the VP angle. It's like, look, if you don't like the angle that a Rush org's involved at all, just go get someone else then. Go get your own talent. So here's one, by the way, that I know people won't like to hear, but I'll just throw it out there. Get a fucking Ukrainian. Have you thought that through? It's all about Ukraine, right? Here's my problem with you, Na'Vi. Not only is your entire org from day dot being able to survive off oligarch money that wasn't Ukrainians, then it was even implied recently, you'd only fully divested recently. You get money, millions and millions from, by the way, the latter millions from the very VP fucking oligarch, the exact guy, not even someone else. But here's another angle. I followed esports history. The team Na'Vi was created with the express premise. It was to show that Ukraine could be the best in esports. That's why the first lineup was all Ukrainians. When they came to CS4, it was all Ukrainian until you got in the Guardian and people like that. And the initial seized and those people came over. So the weird thing about this is, as an org, the joke is they used to have the Russian flag until the beginning of this year because they had the majority Russian players in their best ever era. So the real premise that's bizarre is this, is like, it's also not a great look as an org, Na'Vi, that you haven't developed any Ukrainian talent. You got bit and that's it. You got bit because the genius Blade somehow found this guy. You haven't done it besides that. Meanwhile, where's all the talent coming from CIS? It's all bloody out of Russia, you idiots. This is a terrible look. Not only have you benefited from it, but every new team that comes up is all Russian, isn't it? It's like 4 or 5 Russians coming up. So I actually also think, by the way, if this is a long-term approach that, like, Perfecto and Electronic can stay because they're sort of grandfathered in, as it were, but we're not taking Russians. Like, I think you're also, as a squad of Na'Vi, it's also going to be hard to re-up players, by the way. There's only so many Kazakhstani and fucking Ukrainian players. There's not an abundance. Loads of the talent now is Russian.
This is why I was going to say, because obviously, like, Bit came through and he's Ukrainian. They've got that head trick kid over at Na'Vi Junior. And it's like, you know, Na'Vi Junior in the We Play League have done pretty well. I mean, obviously in the past they had Munazi on that roster, but that's like their academy side is an entirely Ukrainian lineup. It got absolutely, in the post Munazi world, it got absolutely battered. I think they lost like almost every game that they played.
It makes sense. He was hard carrying every time I watched him.
But, you know, the head trick does seem to be pretty well regarded as a talent. And obviously it stops you have any dealings whatsoever with them or even a conversation. So, you know, I mean, I don't know if he's ready, but he's only 17. But it's you know, it's like I think there's options there if they want to like commit to developing talent from that region, as you say. But yeah, it leaves them in this like weird spot where you're right. There's, you know, like you're gonna have to start looking at like Kazakhstani players now. I mean, you know, and like I mean, as I said, I thought Yekindar would have been a shoo-in.
And there's an even worse angle. It goes like this. There are fuck all other famous Ukrainian orgs. So here's the worst news of all, Richard. Who's going to find the next talent that it could even be from either your country or Kazakhstan? It's going to be Virtus Pro again. It's going to be Force. It's going to be all these orgs that are Russian orgs. So the joke is when they find the talent, you can't sign them because you've committed to not signing them. Every time you're going to have to either do the really awkward thing where they pretend, oh, I'm just going to let this contract run out and then not sign. Then they're going to have to leave. Like, it's going to be so awkward. So the problem I have is this. For the initial lineup, it looks like they're going to get a chance to keep most of the good players and potentially re-up with another good player, and this run will be fine. But this is a problem where if this is going to, like, as we're saying, me and you have a different perspective on this. I think people still imagine the war's going to end in a week and then things are going to go back to that we're through the looking glass now, boys. Like, this is going to be decades of this shit. And in esports, like we've been saying, it may well be the case that Russia's about to just be completely sealed off and we're not going to know what's going to happen, like they were bloody citizens of Shanghai or something. So I think there's a world where this could cause massive problems for Na'Vi just going forwards. Like I say, genuinely, not just for optics reasons. If I were them, I'd be putting loads of fucking money into your academy squad of fucking Ukrainians and bringing up all Ukrainian talent, initiatives. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do much of them right now, but that should be a massive focus. Because again, the problem with making statements like they made, Richard, is this: that isn't a statement that lasts a week. That statement lasts forever until you wouldn't do it. Until you come out and say, we're now signing people who can be paid in Russia. They're off limits. And unfortunately, they're the major talent base at the moment. It's a tough spot to be in. Yeah. That's also why another reason, if I'm simple, even if this lineup's still good, I'd be starting to get a bit depressed about my future. Like I say, mate, this is like I finally got my chance to win everything. And then it all just gets fucked up like this. And then now I'm losing my mate Boomich. And then what? Oh, Electronic Staysborough under these. Oh, give me a break. Like, it's starting to look more and more fucking dodgy if you're that guy. And he's been, in theory, the maddest part is he was able to put up with any amount of shit in his career before this. But like, it's going to come to a head at some point in time. You're going to get frustrated eventually. Like you're saying, the way he's talking, it doesn't even sound like he needs a break. It sounds like maybe I just leave and do I come back? It's like I have to figure out if I want to play Counter-Strike. That's not a fucking good sound with the best player ever saying that.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I'm worried about. I'm like, imagine a world where everyone relocates and then Simple's just like, I can't anymore. Like, I need some time. You know, like, because listen, we now live in a world where, and don't get me wrong, I think this is a good thing, but we now live in a world where even star players are starting to feel comfortable saying, I'm going to get a sick note. I can't do this. I need some time.
Oh, I bet a lot of people have watched what Device did and thought, I could actually do that, couldn't I? I could force my way for a few months, or I could ride out the end of my contract. That'll be more common.
Even pre-Device. Think about Glaive, think about Zipnix, you know, getting time off from Astralis after they burnt them out. And it's like, you know what? It again happens in sports. So, you know, if I'm simple, like, who's got more fucking stress like out in the pro scene than him right now? You know, apart from Boomich, obviously. But you know, it's you know, like, listen, if everyone relocates and Simple says like, I need a fucking break, I need some time off. You know, it's all going to be for nothing. I think this team, unfortunately, even with a roster change, it's really holding on, like, you know, by a thread. I think I have concerns for its future. And it's a shame because, again, in an alternate timeline where this fucked up shit doesn't happen, we're probably talking about one of the greatest teams all time.
Here's another thing I'm really uncomfortable about, and it goes like this. Imagine you're Electronic and you move your family, you take your kid, you take your wife, you go to Serbia, I don't know which is it, Serbia or Ukraine, one of the two. You go there, you get the paperwork, everything's going well, right? Two things. One, what if you shit CS a year from now? Fired? Do you have to go back? How do you go back? What if it's an iron curtain? How do you get back in? What do you do then? Can you go to your family? Two, here's another good one. What if, as you say, Simple takes 6 months off and the team's just shit and they don't want you anywhere? Maybe now they go, why did we bring you guys over? It was only really to keep Simple happy. Like, there's so many scenarios where, like, people have done that thing again where they're just thinking if the best case scenario happens. Yeah, it all works out then. There's a million scenarios that work out badly for everyone, it sounds like.
Yeah, totally. While we're talking about things working out badly for everyone, I hope we're all having a good look at the start of IEM Dallas.
This is amazing. Like you'd almost think again, like this is how you know I do what it's not me. I figured out what's happened here, Richard. The last few years, it's not that I literally control the simulation. It must be like that classic 70s sci-fi movie, The Lathe of Heaven. My unconscious must control the simulation. Because what I want to happen does happen. It just happens in a way I don't know at what time. So, like, can you even imagine that IEM Dallas already has become like, even after the first few days, it was almost beyond parody how like bad the team list was getting. And then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Like, for example, even when he said stuff like, well, whatever, maybe someone like Nip just steals it up. Nip can't take one of their players. Oh, okay. What about heroic? Entire heroic teams out. Oh, okay. But yeah, like after all this, it's not just becoming one of the shittest events ever. And sadly, it's a Grand Slam event. But not only that, Imperial's dead last. Chef's kiss. Whoever came up with this is a fucking... They came last place at one of the shittest tier one lands ever. By the way, I'll tell you just as an aside, because it's just really... Every time you think to yourself, are Richard and Thorin being too harsh on fans? Do we diminish these young people who are just trying to understand the world? Do you know how many comments I saw implying it's unfair that ESL doesn't count PGL's major in ESL's Intel Grand Slam? That's a real sentiment. Why the fuck would I include your tournament, my rival, in my sponsors' giant $1 million thing? What even is that?
I will add, mate.
I love fans. I love them.
Such a spectacular, fucking petty thing.
Oh, that was mental. I know
to call it the CS:GO Valve.
Yeah, people don't know.
Valve major.
You know when they get some cynical fucking social media manager, player manager type person to write up those letters that look like they're handwritten to the players, but they're all just signed at the bottom. Right? When they do that,
when they always pull the wrong name. If you're like the French lucky.
It happened to Adren. The Kazakhstani Adren got listed for Team Liquid. I think even when
they did the French lucky for Astralis as well.
There you go. So they not only did they do that, which makes it seem immediately insincere, but in the one for FaZe, they said to them, like, you know, and of course you've won IEM Katowice, ESL Pro League, and then the way they even phrased it was like some fucking nightmare dystopia, like the CS:GO Valve major, not even just the major. By the way, if you're trying to make it seem colloquial, if you just put the major, that even almost gets away with it. The CS:GO Valve major. That's like you've gone out of your way to just not say PGL Antwerp, as though, and this is why they are pathetic, Richard, as though it has any meaningful significance on anything, as though their stock goes up, they get more money, they don't get anything. This is like, I told the story on Twitter, but it's true. When I used to make some of those like little hype trailers for ESL or do some like written piece, they would sometimes tell me stuff like, look, I know it's going to be hard, but if you're writing about Na'Vi, can you not mention that they beat Astralis? I'd be like, that's like their big win of the last 3 months. And they'd go, yeah, but the thing is, Astralis is skipping the event, so you'd rather not mention their name. And I was like, but they're the number one team in the world, though. You're not hyping them in any way. And they'd be like, listen, it's not from me, it's from higher up. It's like, how petty is this fucking company? They're so silly, aren't they?
It's so dumb.
I know.
It's like teams don't see stuff. Like, put it this way, you don't even do that in sports. You just don't even do it in sports. Mate, it's like, think about like when a franchise moves in the NFL or some, like in the NBA, they just fucking disappear. You don't airbrush them out of history. You know, baseball, like, mate, it's fucking crazy. You know, it's like, it's so dumb.
They are consistent, though. I'll give you.
Oh no! Listen.
They are incredibly German in that regard. They're so on the nose with the stupid shit they do.
Yeah, they do it. But anyway, look. Let's. I want to say, by the way, like on a slightly serious note, but we'll get into mocking ESL in just a moment. Take a look at this event, guys, and look at the visa issues.
Yep.
And this is the future now. Understand, because even though I don't think outside of Ukraine there is a nation that is officially blocking Russian visas being processed, I don't think we're there yet. Although it could come at any time with a new wave of sanctions because the conflict doesn't show any sign of slowing down. You know, we're already at a stage where, first of all, if you're a Russian-based org, you are already going to have the problems of direct flights. All the major airlines aren't doing direct flights from Russia anymore, so you have to get on a lesser airline, go to a country that isn't honouring that ban, and then so now you're adding on all this cost and all this time just to get to the event in the first place. Second of all, if you look at the orgs that got denied, being relocated doesn't even spare you. It doesn't even spare you. So Navi, a Ukrainian-based organization with Russian players who have recently agreed to relocate, they couldn't get visas. Entropic, a Czech Republic-based organization with Russian players, they were not able to obtain visas to compete in the United States. Virtus Pro, they were the first ones to fall by the wayside. A Russian org, obviously, with Russian players, but not exclusively Russian. The Latvians and Kazakhstanis, they were not able to obtain the visas. And listen, I'll tell you, it's not even that these visas need to be explicitly denied, because, maybe that will be unfair and seen as prejudicial should anyone ever do like an audit. All they need to do is just say, if you're coming over to compete, we need further evidence. And then you will not be able to get the evidence to them in time.
So where they soft deny you if they want to,
Exactly. That's what it is. If they're for a competitor, for someone coming to play on a competitor's visa in America, like obviously if you've got specific dates the competition is, and they just say, listen, we need further evidence to look into this. That's that. You're going to miss the tournament. And so listen, I was amazed, and like I say, I'm working on an article about all of this stuff. I was amazed we got through Antwerp with
it's wild, isn't it?
With not one person being affected, especially after the comments from members of the Belgian government saying Russians are not welcome here right now. And so what I'm told behind the scenes, apparently PGL were all over that shit.
Could imagine.
The mayor of Antwerp was all over that shit. That's why he was there at the event. Everybody did a concerted effort to make sure none of the teams were impacted, which is fantastic, by the way. That's like an example of you actually feel like esports matters for a moment.
Yes.
Meanwhile, back in America, of course, fuck you, denied. And not just the Russian teams being disproportionately affected. Remember, Russian teams, Ukrainian orgs, people living in Czech Republic, people living in Serbia, just happen to have a Russian passport. But also Spink's not there, Heroic not there. What the fuck's gone on with that? Brazilian players being denied as well. What a fucking mess. You have to start asking, by the way, like long term, given the fact that the region is fucking barely got any teams anyway, why are we even having events in America? Like real talk.
I'll give you another reason as well. Here's another one that I think is the death blow to the idea of events in America in light of all the things you've just listed. Because by the way, there's another one people didn't get. The first thing I actually thought initially when I heard about Flames, obviously because he came to prominence before Spinks, is I've known people who are Israeli, like actual Israelis, not just like I'm in the country and I have Israeli, but no, they actually live in Israel. They also occasionally have trouble with the visa, just every now and then, but just almost randomly, so that was already going to be a problem. Like the problem with this event is it's hit by everything. The heroic one was COVID, sounds like they tested and maybe someone had to do a PCR or something to fly, and that's some of the issue. That's what is like implied. As you say, the other ones were the visas. Like in this scenario, I'd had this last detail in, which goes like this. The one good reason to do events in the US is generally, I know people will dispute this, but I think generally US crowds are pretty good when they do turn out. It's usually one of the better esports crowds. Spoiler, that doesn't even exist anymore. Like this event itself had to brag. I mean, this is how stupid Reddit is. Oh, wow, they're paying a truck to drive around in the event. So that's a terrible sign. Remember what they were bragging about with the ESL Rio? We sold the whole tickets out in 30 minutes. Maybe we should get a bigger venue.
On that truck, it said 15% off. That's how you know. It was a discount.
Yeah, that's also, by the way, again, if you're a fan, it's like, oh, that must be no. That, by the way, when they do 15% off like that, that's like desperate. Like, please. I mean, if you don't know the next step, this did happen years ago. I think it was 2015. ESL once just surreptitiously tried to give away thousands of tickets to IEM San Jose. It's just that's the one where infamously the guy just went straight to Reddit. Like, I've got this box of free tickets to like IEM San Jose, and I even remember just thinking, look. Listen, fair fucks, ESL. I didn't work with them at the time, but you have got mad and lucky on that one. Like, what are the odds this cunt finds him and then just goes straight to Reddit? Like, there's a million ways that just works out in your favor, doesn't it? And people turn up from the local YMCA or whatever. So, in general, when you add it all together, like the history American events have of having issues getting the crowd or the crowd being half full, and all this, knock the whole region on the head. I'm sorry, Counter-Strike right now with all that we're doing and the fact that, by the way, sorry, we need these Russian players in our tournaments. The fucking major should have shown you that, guys. Since we need them, it has to be in Europe. We have that. In fact, I would even say it's time to almost go like cynical and just figure out which countries are the most reliable, and that's where the events have to be.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, look, at the end of the day, and because I know we always get accused of, being biased towards Brazilian fans, and stuff like this. Listen, I'm all for if Rio goes off without a hitch and we can fucking avoid some of the issues of going to, a region that, does have parts around it that are notorious for crime. Listen, at the end of the day, if we can get all the players in and have a fucking tournament and everyone's safe and everyone's happy and having a good time, do that again for me. Yeah, absolutely. What I'm sick and tired of is having tournaments that don't mean anything. They don't mean anything. This tournament is a waste of time. If they had any respect at all, right, like Intel themselves would say, don't put this towards the Grand Slam. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. It's an absolute joke. How right? The teams that are chasing the Grand Slam aren't even there, so they haven't even had an opportunity to compete. At that point, it has to be null and void. Navi are not playing in IEM Dallas. Like, it's that simple. It cannot count. It cannot. So, just insane. So, yeah, I think if it's going to be like this moving forward, if ESL don't have the clout, like PGL did, to figure out with the government how to get fucking visas approved and work with orgs, guys, go to the regions you have the contacts. Yes. Go to the regions we can actually have tournaments in. Because this is a joke, like, and everyone's just sat there. I mean, listen, we're going to talk about the actual tournament next episode. Yeah. But, like, let's also just say as well, like, right, so you've got an underwhelming crowd. You're having to essentially give tickets away. Teams aren't turning up left, right, and centre. Those that do are using fucking stand-ins. People are in, out, can't get passports, can't do this, can't do that. Then on top of that, this production, dog shit. Like, it's a joke. You would have got triggered as fuck. There was a beeping noise in the background from just the building, the venue they're in. Beep, 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 sounding like a forklift truck fucking reversing. When people watch this, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And I'm amazed there wasn't a Reddit thread about it. Yeah. Not to mention, there was a moment on the B stream where it literally looked like, I don't even know what they were streaming it on, a fucking BBC Micro or something. Had about 10 FPS for about 30 minutes. It was a slideshow. And Dave, Reddit thread for that, and in comes the ESL paid groveler. 170 upvotes for you for saying it's not good enough. It's not good enough every event. When's it going to be good enough? When are you going to spend some of this blood money you just took? Like, at least give me a fucking show. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, fuck it. I can't stop you taking the money. I can point out the hypocrisy of every moral stance you take from now until the end of fucking time because you took literal blood money. And I cannot wait, by the way. The first day of Pride Month, we're recording this. Can't wait to see your fucking flag, ESL. I'll be there, motherfuckers, you best believe, right? So, but it's like, give me a show that works. The commentators are having, like, every time they did a replay, mate, it was like, can I get a rewind? Making this noise like they were doing it manually with the fucking, the back and forth on the fucking tricorder. TriCaster, sorry. It's fucking mental how bad it was. And it's like, it was like this when they were on their knees financially. When do you level up? When does ESL level up? This event is garbage. Now, here's a question for you to explore this. Like, Intel can't be happy with this, right? Remember, Intel Extreme Masters, that brand that's been built up over a decade at ESL, right? It is considered to be the gold standard by Intel.
They even folded the ESL one into it now. Yes, they're making it. It's all about Intel. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it's $100 million sponsorship, nothing to be sneezed at. If I'm Intel and I see this event and I see the teams dropping out, I see people potentially in for a Grand Slam being disproportionately penalised just because of where we decided to hold the event this time. And and spoiler, I do not agree with the premise that just because you can't obtain a visa, you should have to sit a fucking tournament out. And that's your fault, right? No, these things, should be all worked out. There's got to be a way.
If I'm the Louvre teams, I'm calling a little fucking meeting and let's get something done.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So here's the question. Given that we all know that ESL, sly little cunts that they are, here's what they did, basically. They knew they were getting bought out by the Saudis, so they went to Valve and they said, yes, we will do all the majors. Yep, thanks, Valve. Anything we want to tell you about? No, nothing in our future, don't worry. And then they went to Intel and they said, listen, we really love all these initiatives that we're doing too for social programs and diversity and positivity. So we are really looking forward to extending our partnership by 5 years. There's the handshake. Anything we want to tell you about? No, Intel. No, nothing's going on with us. What do you mean? What have you heard? What have you heard? oh, nothing's going on with us. And then, of course, then they went away and announced the fucking blood money deal just after everyone re-upped with them. They deliberately constructed it that way. They deliberately did it. It was
intentionally deceitful, obviously.
Yes, exactly. Because, Intel might have a thing or two to say these positions aren't tenable. There is nothing compatible with what Intel are publicly saying.
As far as I know, it was Intel that actually wanted any key made, right? Weren't they sort of the impetus behind doing this exact partnership for that exact reason? Yeah.
So how on earth can they be happy at the fact that they are now forever going to be associated? And remember, guys, it's not just that they are taking money from the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund. It is, and this is to quote you, Duncan, a key detail. It is that to take that money, you must agree that the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is the chairman of the board of the company. That's the agreement. That is who they serve. They can publicly tell you, oh, we have shareholders and we serve. The only people they have to serve is him. That is it. So no, there is no separation between them and the Saudi state. And so if I was a sponsor, and I was always now going to be adjacent to human rights violators, when what I'm trying to do is encourage people to be better to each other and not violate human rights, I'd be a little bit pissed off. So add to that this event has been utterly dog shit. Like, please, Intel, nut the fuck up and tell ESL that this cannot be allowed to stand moving forward. Someone has to light a fire under their ass. Like, it's a joke. They occupy 80% of the calendar. The events are fucking dog shit. They're taking blood money and not even fucking spending it on anything tangibly good. This is garbage. Like, this is meant to be the fucking industry leaders. They love throwing that out there. It's a joke. So what do you think? Do you think Intel might get pissed off?
I definitely think this is an area where, of all the people, you think ESL would know better. You have fucked up the optics on this so impossibly bad. Because as Richard says, there is no other read than you did this all intentionally, deceitfully, funnily enough, to tie into a similar topic, in the same way as we know actually from your reporting that Riot did know that they were going to do the Neon deal, but they thought, right, the Pride Month stuff's just about to finish, or maybe just wait a little bit. And then they intentionally did it, which, by the way, implies they knew it would be outrageous. They knew that people would be offended, that people would think this is hypocritical. You have a moral standard, but they fucked around with it. So that angle in itself, I would find very disturbing for a partner anyway. Like you said, they've essentially purposely omitted, it's the lie of omission, some key detail when I've done a deal with you. And now, optics-wise, you represent everything I don't represent. In fact, if people don't know, they're just lucky that people who are journalists, right, for these big websites don't really care that much about esports. Because like the first thing I would do if I wrote for one of these big newspapers is I'd have written an article about all the things that Saudi Arabia does with women and gays. And I would just point out like this is incompatible with both Intel's strategy through AnyKey and ESL and GG for all of what they represent. It's actually completely it is by definition incompatible. I agree with you. If you're going to like piss in my face, tell me it's fucking rain. And then on top of that, go, I've got all this blood money to make esports mega. Make it mega, then you daft cunt. Don't cut corners anymore. Don't make shitty events. Because I also agree on the Grand Slam angle, by the way. If I'm Intel, this is actually mental. Like, it's almost at the point where I feel like contacting someone from ESL and telling them, you are aware you're about to have someone win the fourth Grand Slam, and of the 4 Grand Slams, like, look, the Team Liquid one's just subjective to the fact that we didn't have Astralis there. The other two, the last 2 Grand Slams, people don't even consider legit, you idiots. Like, one of them was online, and then now you had a chance for a land Grand Slam, and it's going to be semi-worthless, because unfortunately, one event's essentially going to be like a free one, isn't it? Like, this isn't even a fucking Infinity Stone. You just get this, you essentially just have to lean over and pick it up if you're fucking FaZe Clan. The joke would be, it'll actually be a way bigger blow to FaZe Clan if they don't win this one, because holy fuck, there's no one in this one. Either all the top teams have dropped out, or the people who are like your rare competitors, Ents and Nip, they don't even have their real teams. Like, this is actually mental how easy this one should be. So I do think that sucks, because it's like I said about the Na'Vi one, it did take away from the Na'Vi one that too many of the tournaments were online. So finally, we're supposed to be back to LAN. This is like, remember that was even ESL who started that shit. We're back on LAN. Like, yeah, and look what it's fucking like. Look at what it's like.
I know, yeah. It's great that we're back on LAN and none of the teams can get into the country that we're holding the LAN in. That's perfect. You know, it's mad. And yeah, like you said, this is meant to be like the jewel in the competitive crown. This is the narrative thread over the course of the season.
By the way, I even was on board with the premise if we'd have been able to do this for real, like they initially planned with the Grand Slam. I was on board with the premise this might one day be considered a better accomplishment than winning a major because he could obviously fluke a major. The point is, here's how you know it's a fluke, boys. Cloud9 could not have won a Grand Slam. It wouldn't have happened. We know that. That's why that could have been. I actually remember thinking, look, even though it's Intel, I don't like ESL. This is a fucking great initiative. What a banging idea. I've always wanted someone to treat the circuit as bigger than just individual tournaments and the majors, the be all and end all. So sadly, it's taken a lot of the sort of fucking luster out of that idea. It's not
totally.
Now.
No, it definitely isn't. And listen, like I said, this event, like I'm not even sure, like looking at it, like whether or not they could have had a better event on the calendar. Like, so, you know, because this season is like IEM Winter at the end of last year, Katowice, the Pro League, and then it's after Dallas, it's Cologne, another Pro League, then the major in Rio. These are all fantastically prestigious events.
Yep.
Where does this weird scuffed Dallas event fit into the notion of a Grand Slam? Why have they like? It's just weird. It just I don't know. Like there had to be another option, surely. Like it just I don't know. This whole event's just so scuffed and fucked up now. It's like. I don't know, like maybe, I mean, on the plus side, as you said, it does feel like a layup for FaZe Clan. You know?
Oh, I've got another angle as well I wanted to take on in this, which is, now look, I know people will just say I'm being biased against the ESL because sadly they A, can't acknowledge their own bias, which is completely transparent in every bloody comment, and B, I don't lie, so it doesn't matter if I'm biased against me, you daft cunt, I'm still going to tell the truth. That's actually a great fucking principle to have in life. It's how you can get through shit. So here's the premise, right? I genuinely think, and I would say this if this was Blast, let's say it was Flashpoint, mate, if it never had bloody fans. I think you've actually at this point in time created a bad faith event. Like, I do not think it is fair that you could put tickets on sale for this event with that team list. Remember, I think it might have even been possible to buy tickets when you thought Na'Vi was going.
It was.
You remember, they were just about to win the major.
I know it was because in the resultant Reddit thread when Na'Vi announced they couldn't obtain the visas, there was some comments in there saying, I bought a ticket specifically to see Na'Vi and see Simple in person.
Because the reason why this kills me is I remember, you'll know the event, when we had that DreamHack Masters Las Vegas event, which on paper should have been one of the best events you could have had. Las Vegas is the fight capital of the world. People fly in from other countries to watch UFC, watch boxing. So I thought, fucking brilliant. Look, if anyone's going to fly into an event in America, surely it's in Vegas, got all those airport angles you can come in from. Everyone can come over from LA in like 2 hours or something mental. Like, this will be a slam dunk, right? You're going to have a massive crowd. Famously, as a result, they even hired that stadium where it was all like you could see all 4 views. And because there was so little people, they had to have it on one view of like part of SK Gaming's family or whatever the fuck to make it look like they had any crowd, right? The lesson a lot of us learned from that event was that in Counter-Strike, at least, you can't just have like 20 events in the year and have 4 in America and just be like, they'll all sell out. And the reason it seems like they don't sell out, as far as I can tell, is this is the vibe I got, is that the dynamic in America is more like this. Because every kid, like you see, that's why every America event is people going, woo! Like some shit Ric Flair. Like, that's because they're all 16-year-old kids. They're all Zoomers, right? And in America, obviously, by the way, being under 18, you just fuck to do anything yourself. So the vibe I got was, what you do is, you have one event in the year, you ask daddy, can I have it for my birthday or as a gift? Can we go to this esports event? It's the thing I'm into. He books you in. So it's IEM Dallas, so it's ESL New York, depends where you live, obviously. He books you in for that one event. And if you're that little pleb fan, that's your event. That better be the best event ever. Imagine if it's this event, mate.
I know.
I mean, if you're a fan of any of the top 5 teams except FaZe, you're fucked already. Even if you're a fan, by the way, even if you're a bloody Imperial fan, they're out on the day one. Like, mate, with all the dropouts, I genuinely feel like even if you're a fan of FaZe, you're not going to get them see them play good teams. This feels like whack. And also, tickets aren't cheap nowadays, guys. This isn't kind of eat so we can keep them coming for free. This is, you pay top dollar for these tickets now. In fact, if you really did get your dad to do it for your birthday, you're probably going to get that bloody, what do you call, like the mega pass, the fucking, what's their premium one called?
Yeah, the mega
whatever
pints.
They call it.
Yeah, I don't
the
know.
one that you get all the extra shit. Again, you just feel like you've been ripped off at this point in time. You know?
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, at the end of the day as well, like, again, there's only 2. It's a pretty binary option. Either ESL just sort of legitimately thought it was all going to be okay visas wise, and then this just happened and ESL didn't know about it, in which case you're going to have to get your shit together for the next event that's in the US, because it cannot ever be like this ever again. As I said, if I'm an Intel executive and this event has got my fucking brand on it, I'm livid, right? But then the other option you've got is that they actually did know and knew for some time and just waited for the orgs to disclose it while they were selling tickets, in which case, fuck you.
I feel like I'm leaning towards that one. Obviously, that's pure speculation on that one. By the way, there's even another angle on this that I also think is mental, because it's a way I can sort of tag this onto Astralis as well. By the way, I think it's already out of the tournament, but you'll like this one, because this one allows me to simultaneously tag Astralis and Fnatic, two of the orgs that, I mean, actually, what sad thing if people don't know is it's just Fnatic League of Legends fans that turn me against that org. There's been such a shower of shit to me. Obviously, Khan's even a fucking friend of mine, you morons, and up to this day asks for advice on things. But basically, here's the story. So obviously Trace is now the coach of Astralis, right? And he could not attend this event. Now, the reason why is very weird. You might know it from E-League in 2016. Because Carrigan and Trace were both in Fnatic at the end of 1.6. When 1.6 was winding down, Fnatic did one of those moves where they thought this is where you were just way too naive and you were too ahead of the game in esports. It hadn't got there yet. They thought, we're going to unlock other regions in the world. So the same way as a long time ago, SK went to China and people went to India. They went to Iran. That's right. One of the axis of evil countries of the fucking Bush administration. They just went to Iran. And then after that, when Carrigan in 2016 tried going E-League for FaZe, initially we thought he wasn't going to get in because he was basically told that you're not allowed the Esther. You're not allowed to just come in on the fucking frequent thing. You have to have a real visa, which I assume he eventually got. And I assume now he probably had the 5-year visa and he's fine, right? And he's re-upped it. Trace obviously only became the coach of Astralis a few months ago because of that situation with Ave and the ban he had, etc. So first of all, great job, Fnatic. So for the point of a shitty PR tour or some shit tournament you played in that meant nothing, your players 10 years later still can't go to the main country for esports in the West. Bang up job from Fnatic, because I hate in general, if you notice, when orgs do fucked up shit that put the liability on you. So it just wrecks your life and your career. But they can just replace you and get someone who doesn't have a problem going to America. I hate that shit already. Yeah. And then secondly, if you're Astralis, what level of clown shoes is this? Because you know what this gives away? It gives away you didn't want Trace as your coach. Because if you did, by the way, you could have got working on that visa months ago, mate. You could have had this visa by now. You know he's going to America at some point. By the way, a spoiler, you think there's never going to be another major in America?
I know.
I'd have had this visa sorted out 6 months ago if I really knew he was going to be coach. So even though that's just a small side detail, it's another one of those ones where it's like, these orgs really do.
Well, I'll tell you how they fucked it up. It's because it wasn't even a visa. They just assumed it was all going to be okay on an Esther. And so went which, by the way, I'm not going to say use the word legality, but like if you're going and Esther explicitly
it's supposed to be tourism, yeah,
you're just going there for the purposes of tourism. So I mean, I'm sure loads of orgs try and cheese it on an Esther. That's been a problem. That's some
old school shit. That's some 5 years ago shit.
That's like mad unprofessional.
I agree.
So I'll tell you, as someone who has had visas and had Esthers, one of the questions literally is, have you been to any of these places? Yep. And it is a throwback to the era. They updated the Esther agreement, which is a special agreement with certain European territories and America. And they updated it in the post 9/11 landscape to include sites that were notorious for radicalizing people. And so they ask you that list of countries specifically on the Esters because it's like it's an Esther. It's something that is, I think it might even be automated. And so, I think so. Because there's so many of them being applied to it. So basically, there is now a page of questions where essentially you tick any of the boxes. It says things like, have you ever been arrested for a drug offense? Have you ever been involved in a gang? Have you ever committed a crime? Have you ever, and then it literally says, have you been to like Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan, or any of these other places in the past 10 years? And if you tick that box, you're having a bad time on an Esther. You've got to apply for a full visa so they can look out and see what you were doing, because they do everything, criminal background checks and all sorts. So you know, yeah, basically that's like an entrapment. Now, I'm not saying lie on an Esther, obviously.
No, of course
but
not.
Definitely don't do that, because if you get caught lying on an Esther, you just get banned. You can't have another one.
Yep.
So for like 10 years or whatever it is. So don't do that. But equally as well, like if you know I have traveled to Iran and you know that question is on the Esther,
Yep.
and you should know this, then you must absolutely, you're going to have to apply for a visa.
Yep.
Spoiler, if you're working while you're over there, you should be applying for a visa
Absolutely.
anyway, guys. So yeah, I mean, that is why I didn't even mention that one, because that's Astralis is bad.
I know, it's a bad look. It's a bad look. That isn't ESL's fault at all.
No.
Absolutely clear. I'm just saying that it's a chance to just springboard on some Astralis shit. Because again, like, remember, guys, I didn't do this. I know they're just a shitty little esports org that started a few years ago, but they do present themselves like they're Barcelona or something, mate. They try to act like they're some world leader in fucking esports. So, like, act like it, you can't.
Yeah, absolutely mad. So yeah, I think those are the big topics. Obviously, we are about to get into Rostermania season, and we are about to complete the Intel Extreme Masters Dallas scuffed event, which who even knows who's going to win that? If it's not fucking FaZe, they've definitely took themselves up here.
They're going to look so stupid if they don't win now. I know.
But like, you never know. G2 still in the mix. Anyway, so look, I think we'll just end the episode there. We used to do viewer questions here. Spoiler: the Patreon's now officially closed. There is no more viewer questions. What me and Duncan have been thinking about doing is maybe we'll take viewer questions and do like one a month. We'll answer them or something in a video. No one will watch except the viewers that answer the questions, because those things never bang for numbers. But whatever. Anyway, that was the revenge. We will see you again next time. Bye.
Chris is still in the picture. Oh, I'm still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects in. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off.